winning record this year. And probably perhaps the bigger story here is the very short leash that is on their head coach and their GM here, guys. We know they're hanging on here for their jobs. They need a quarterback. They need to make a move here that can give their offense and Coach Nagy something to work with to give it some life so they can have some success. So if there's any team I think that is desperate, that should be doing this, a team that we know was in on Russell Wilson a few weeks ago, the Chicago Bears should do something to get a quarterback.
Yeah, I think the hot seat situation you're talking about there is a major factor. Meanwhile, guys, sneaky big news over the weekend. I don't want to let this go without comment on it here. In a very unusual trade between AFC contenders, the Ravens sent the Chiefs Pro Bowl tackle Orlando Brown in exchange for multiple draft picks. It's a big trade. They got a lot in return. Notably, they get the Chiefs' first-round pick. The Chiefs get Baltimore's second-round pick. But if you take a look at this, look at all these new names that will be on the offensive line for Kansas City. We know how badly they struggled in the Super Bowl because they had both tackles banged up. Well, here's a whole bunch of new names they brought in, and that doesn't even take into account two players who opted out for them last year who will be back. So with that thought in mind, but before I do anything else, Dominique, I just have to come to you as a Raven. I mean, the Ravens, this is their arch rival, right? I mean, that's the mountain they can't climb, and they just traded them exactly what they need. I found that surprising. How did you find it?
Yeah, from that standpoint, I think maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it seems pretty obvious when you look at their roster. They paid Ronnie Stanley enough to be a left tackle. They're not going to be able to afford to keep Orlando Brown, who took over for Stanley when he got injured, at left tackle after this season. So this was a smart thing to do. They were going to lose him at the end of the season anyway. Now they got an extra draft pick that they could possibly use to get a cheap replacement for him in the first round. So I think this was a smart move by the Ravens, and they believe that their defense can't be stopped by just one tackle if they go up against the Chiefs once again.
No, they don't have a lot of evidence of that, but I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Well, I mean, the point is that the tackle isn't going to be the difference maker in that situation, I guess.
I hear you, but I mean, so Tim, let's just look at that, and I just put that full screen up there. It's not just this move, but all the moves Kansas City has made. We already were talking about them as the favorites in the AFC because of the quarterback and the coach, but now they seem to have gotten exactly what they needed to put themselves right back where they want to be, yes?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement, Greeny. And, you know, I think we probably need to give Kansas City the credit that we used to give New England, and the fact that New England would always have a plan. You know, when they would cut a certain player, well, they had a replacement in mind. And I think that that's how we have to look at the Chiefs. Think about it. When they had Dee Ford and it was like, well, they let him go. Well, they replaced him with Frank Clark. Or they had a plan when they drafted Patrick Mahomes of sitting him. And they had, you know, a plan with how they're going to deal with Tyreek Hill after they drafted him. I just think that they are a team that leaves no stone unturned. And I think that we probably haven't talked about them in that regard. Look, I think the situation in the Super Bowl kind of got thrust on them with injuries late in the year, and they found themselves playing in the Super Bowl without either starting tackle. They're not going to let that happen, and this is clearly their plan when you go back and look at both tackles basically being released, you know, just a month or so ago.
Yeah, Diana, circling it back to you here. What did you hear around the league after this trade?
Yeah, Tim, I love that connection you make there in terms of them, you know, Veach making just really good decisions. And of course, we know Andy Reid's got his paws all over this. They've really turned into an organization that has a plan and sticks with it. But Greeny, I think what's interesting, and applying this to the draft coming up in a few days here, this just goes to show you that the Kansas City Chiefs probably felt it was too expensive. It would cost them too much to move up in the draft to get an offensive lineman. So around the league, this is looked at as obviously the price being too high for Kansas City, but also perhaps the depth at the offensive line position for this rookie class. Perhaps it's not at the level that the Chiefs needed and wanted it to be. So all in all, most think that this was a really fair, smart trade by both teams. I wasn't hearing a lot of criticism over the weekend.
Yeah, there are a bunch of left tackles who figure to go rounds 2 or 3, and maybe this is a statement. Names you may not know: Jackson Carman and Dylan Radins and a few others. The Rashawn Slaters and the Penei Sewells of the world will be long gone. by the time Kansas City would have
Yes.
been picking. Guys, stay tight. Lots more football as we go. But to the game.
Back in this draft, I think you look at Patrick Surtain at second. A lot of people think he's the best corner. He's probably ready to go right away, and the Cowboys need a hole filler immediately. I think J.C. Horn is as well. An in-your-face corner with a complete corner with those great bloodlines with his father, Joe. I think it's a corner, whether it's Horn or Surtain. They're going to have to make that call.
All right, we will see one way or the other. They have that decision. Stephen Jones is one of the people who will make that decision. This is what he had to say regarding the 10th pick and the possibility of drafting Florida tight end Kyle Pitts.
You don't have to look very far to have a version of what we call the clips that really, compiles all the media that's about the Cowboys that we get every day. And you don't have to look very far and see mock drafts that, have no tight end getting picked in the top 9 picks.
All right, so to be clear, Mel, the chances of Kyle Pitts being available at number 10 are extraordinarily remote, right? Or zero. One man's extraordinarily remote is another man's zero. I'll go there with you. So my question to you is, if the Cowboys want him, they're going to have to go up and get him. If they do that, I'll be sitting next to you Thursday night. What will you say?
Bad move. I don't think, not to get Kyle Pitts is not a bad move, but to give up all that it would take to get Kyle Pitts when you have a Civ-like defense that needs a lot of help. I would be better off, if I'm the Cowboys, backing off a 10 and picking up some extra choices. They're in no position, I think, to just try to outscore people. I mean, you got to think about it. The offensive line's got to get better as well. Kyle Pitts would be a great addition, a phenomenal addition. I think he's the second best player in the draft. If he fell to the Cowboys, it would be an easy decision. You take him over the defensive players. My thing is, I'm not giving up a lot of picks to go up and get him, and I don't think he'll be there where they're picking at 10. So unless they're going to be aggressive and go get him, they're not going to see Kyle Pitts. I don't care whatever, any projections and any mock drafts out there. There's no way the second best player in this draft is getting the 10.
All right, so Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn. Dominique, I'll come to you, my cornerback friend. Should they take the corner, or should they be aggressive and try and get the tight end?
Obviously, you take the corner. Like, the corners are the most valuable position not named quarterback. But I do think that if they trade up, their idea is that they are going to outscore everybody on their way to the championship, which is not mind-blowing. Like, that's not a thing that can happen. I think it's unlikely to happen because the opportunity cost of the players you will be losing for the draft picks you would have to trade, I think, does debilitate their team. So they're going to go with that cornerback at that position. That's a smart thing to do. Or maybe look at one of those tackles to rebuild that offensive line. But I think corner is the decision right there. I'd go with Surtain, although J.C. Horn has the same NFL pedigree. His dad was a wide receiver, which that kind of cuts against him if you ask me.
It's a 4-time Pro Bowler. Joe Horn was the dad of J.C. Horn. And, of course, Patrick Surtain is the second. His father was the first. Tim Hasselbeck, let me come to you on that, because I could see a different way of looking at it, which is to say there probably isn't any one player who's going to fix that Dallas defense. You're going to need a lot of stuff. You wind up getting Kyle Pitts. That offense might genuinely be unstoppable. That would be the one way I could look at this and figure that it makes some sense. What are you thinking?
Well, what I'm thinking is that Stephen Jones is maybe finding some middle schoolers mock drafts or something. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know what mock drafts he's looking at. You have Mel basically say there's no chance that he's available at 10. I don't think that anybody thinks that he's still going to be available at 10. And if we could kind of sit here and say that Dallas shouldn't move up if he for some reason falls outside of, say, the top 6 picks, then look, maybe somebody else has the ammo to go move up to draft Kyle Pitts. So I just don't see any shot that he's available. I would not fault them if for some reason he was there at 10, but if he's there at 10, then maybe my 7th grader's mock draft